In the modern world, it is almost impossible to ignore a prevailing trend: the widespread desire to be perceived as a good person. This notion of goodness has become so deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness that it has transformed from a mere word into a powerful societal standard. Being good is no longer just about moral integrity or personal character. It has evolved into a measure of social acceptance and respect. In fact, the concept of goodness has become something many of us strive for, a value that is celebrated and admired across all cultures and walks of life. However, as we immerse ourselves in this pursuit of goodness, a question looms large. In our efforts to project this image of being a good person, are we losing sight of who we truly are? Are we sacrificing our authenticity and core values to fit into this idealized version of goodness that society has constructed? The more we chase after this image, the more we risk becoming entangled in a facade that doesn't necessarily reflect our true selves. Instead of embodying goodness from within, we might find ourselves merely performing acts of kindness or virtue for the sake of appearances, without ever truly understanding or internalizing what goodness really means. This seemingly simple question, whether we are truly good people or merely slaves to the image of goodness, deserves much more reflection. It forces us to ask if we are genuinely living in accordance with our moral values, or if we are simply playing a role to meet external expectations, potentially at the expense of our deeper sense of self. The concept of goodness, standard or a burden? Goodness is a virtue that almost everyone aspires to embody. It is an ideal that has been passed down through generations, ingrained in us from an early age, and praised by cultures across the world. We are often taught the importance of being kind to others, of performing good deeds, of showing compassion, and of avoiding harm. Goodness, in its essence, is what gives life its depth and meaning. It is the beauty of humanity, the quality that everyone admires and cherishes. It is a quality that connects us to others, that makes us more relatable and approachable. It brings warmth, fosters trust, and helps create relationships built on understanding and respect. In a society where success is frequently equated with material achievements, status, or financial gains, goodness stands out as a rare and priceless asset. It is something that cannot be bought or fabricated. It is an inherent quality, a testament to one's character. In a world where so much is driven by competition and the pursuit of power, goodness becomes a counterbalance, a beacon of moral integrity. It is what makes us feel proud of ourselves, and it serves as the foundation for meaningful relationships, both personal and professional. People are drawn to goodness because it offers something more profound and lasting than the fleeting pleasures of wealth or fame. However, when goodness becomes a societal standard, a benchmark against which we measure ourselves and others, it can sometimes lead to unexpected consequences. We begin to ask ourselves, how can we be a good person in the most perfect way possible? At this point, the concept of goodness begins to shift from something deeply personal and genuine into a curated image that we construct to gain approval, validation, and recognition from the outside world. What was once a heartfelt virtue, guided by our internal compass, now risks becoming something we perform for others. We engage in acts of kindness, volunteer our time, and try to do good deeds, but the question arises, are we doing these things because we genuinely believe they are the right actions to take, or are we simply acting to meet the expectations of society? In this shift, goodness no longer remains an authentic expression of our values, but rather a strategy to fit in, to be admired, and to avoid judgment. The pressure to conform to this idealized version of goodness can become overwhelming. We may find ourselves engaging in self-sacrificial acts, helping others, or donating our time and resources, not because we genuinely feel compelled to do so, but because we are constantly measuring our worth against the social standards of what it means to be a good person. This shift in motivation raises an important question. Are we still embodying the true spirit of goodness, or have we simply become slaves to an image of goodness that is dictated by societal expectations? Being good a matter of self or society? It's difficult to answer this question in clear terms, as the concept of goodness holds different meanings for different people. For some, being good is an intrinsic part of life, a moral foundation that guides their actions and decisions, a way to live ethically, and a path to build deep, lasting relationships with others. For these individuals, goodness is a core principle that reflects their values, and it emanates naturally from a sense of personal integrity and a desire to contribute positively to the world around them. It's not about seeking external validation or rewards. It's about doing what feels right and building a life rooted in kindness, respect, and fairness. However, for others, the idea of goodness may not come from within, but rather serve as a tool to gain attention, to impress others, or to simply conform to the external standards set by society. In these cases, goodness becomes less about the inherent value of the act itself and more about how it is perceived by others. People may do good deeds or act kindly, not because they genuinely feel the need to help or do the right thing, but because they understand that being good will win them favor, admiration, or approval. They may view goodness as a means to an end, something to enhance their image, to climb social ladders, or to gain status in the eyes of others. Regardless of the intention behind it, when goodness becomes nothing more than a facade, a carefully constructed image meant to mask personal flaws or create an idealized version of ourselves to please others, it loses its true essence. Instead of reflecting an authentic desire to do right by others, it becomes a performance designed for an audience. The authenticity of goodness is sacrificed in favor of a polished exterior, one that might look admirable, but fails to represent the true values and integrity of the person beneath. In these cases, the person may appear to be good on the outside, but they are, in fact, hiding behind a mask, using goodness as a tool to protect themselves from judgment or to fulfill a desire for external validation. This raises an important question. If we are only being good in order to receive praise, recognition, or to meet society's expectations, can we truly say we are good? Or are we merely living as slaves to an image of goodness, enslaved by the desire for approval and the pressure to conform to societal standards? In today's world, where social media and public opinion play an outsized role in shaping how we see ourselves, it's easy to fall into the trap of letting our self-worth be defined by the gaze of others. We begin to view ourselves not through our own eyes, but through the eyes of those around us. Our identity is no longer rooted in our internal values, but in how we are perceived by the people around us, or worse, by an online audience that judges us based on a curated version of ourselves. This is when we begin performing good deeds, not because we genuinely believe they are the right thing to do, but because we want recognition, because we want to be seen as good people in these moments. Goodness becomes less about the moral integrity of our actions and more about the reward or recognition we hope to gain from others. The real question then becomes, are we doing good for the right reasons, or are we simply acting out of a need to conform, to gain acceptance, or to protect our image? And if our goodness is driven solely by external validation, have we lost touch with its true meaning? Freedom or slavery to the image of goodness? So, the question remains, are we truly living freely, being authentic to ourselves, or are we, in fact, enslaved by the image of goodness that society has constructed? When we become consumed by the need to present ourselves as the perfect, good person, we risk losing touch with who we truly are. We get caught up in the pressure to embody a flawless version of goodness, one that meets societal expectations, but may not align with our inner values or beliefs. This pursuit, which often feels like an obligation, doesn't allow us the freedom to live authentically. Instead, we begin to live in service of an image that may be entirely disconnected from our true selves. We become more focused on appearing good than on actually being good, and this pursuit can quickly become a cage, trapping us in a cycle of pretending, performing, and sacrificing our personal truths for the sake of external approval. In this quest to create an impeccable image of goodness, we may begin to lose sight of what goodness truly means. Goodness, at its core, is not about checking boxes or following a set of externally imposed rules. It's about authenticity, integrity, and the desire to help others because we genuinely care, not because we expect something in return. But when our focus shifts from sincerity to image, goodness becomes a performance, one where we are constantly trying to live up to the expectations of others. Every action, every decision, becomes part of a carefully curated narrative. We may find ourselves making choices not because they align with our personal values, but because they reflect what we believe others will approve of. This subtle shift takes away the freedom that comes with living authentically, and instead, we become slaves to the image of goodness, constantly trying to construct and uphold a facade that may not even reflect our true selves. The price of becoming enslaved to this image of goodness is steep. It doesn't just leave us feeling emotionally drained or exhausted from the constant performance. It also leads to a deeper disconnection from the true values that should guide our lives. When we do good things solely for the purpose of gaining attention or approval, we lose out on the deep, intrinsic joy that comes from genuine acts of kindness. The satisfaction we derive from helping others becomes tainted by the need for validation. Instead of feeling fulfilled by the impact we have on others, we become fixated on how our actions are perceived. We start seeking external recognition, and our happiness becomes tied to the approval we receive rather than the intrinsic reward of knowing we've done something meaningful. This shift also distances us from the true essence of what it means to help and support others. When our motivation is rooted in a desire for praise, we miss the richness of selfless giving. We are no longer giving from the heart. We are giving in order to be seen. As a result, we lose the deeper connection that comes from genuine altruism, and instead of fostering authentic relationships based on mutual respect and compassion, we build connections based on the image we project. This not only affects our relationships with others, but also impacts our relationship with ourselves. We may begin to question whether we are doing good because it is the right thing to do, or because we are simply trying to live up to the standards we think others have set for us. In this way, the pursuit of the good person image becomes a trap, one that keeps us in a constant state of performance, always trying to measure up, never truly satisfied with who we are. We become addicted to the approval of others, and in the process, we lose sight of the deeper, more meaningful aspects of life. True happiness and fulfillment come not from how others perceive us, but from living authentically and being true to our values. When we allow ourselves to be enslaved by the image of goodness, we forfeit the opportunity to experience the joy of living freely, fully, and with true integrity. The cost of this slavery is a loss of self, a loss of genuine connection, and ultimately, a loss of the very essence of what it means to be good. How to live good without becoming a slave to the image. So how can we maintain goodness without falling into the trap of being enslaved by its image? The answer lies in living authentically, not for recognition or approval, but because goodness is simply the right thing to do. It requires a deep commitment to acting out of sincerity, not to impress others. Goodness should come from the heart, driven by empathy and a genuine desire to help others, rather than by the need to be seen as virtuous. Goodness is not a mask we wear to attract attention, but an integral part of who we are. It's not something we can just put on like a nice outfit to prove to others that we are good. Instead, it's an ongoing process of making ethical choices, regardless of whether anyone notices. True goodness stems from within, and it's defined by our character, not by societal standards. When we do good deeds for external validation, we risk losing our sincerity. We become slaves to the image of goodness, only focusing on what others think of us rather than the true meaning of our actions. To avoid this, we must act from a place of authenticity, doing what is right not for others, but because it aligns with our own values. Only then can we preserve the true essence of goodness and live freely, without being bound by the expectations of others. Living authentically also means acknowledging that we are not perfect and that goodness is not about flawless behavior. It's about striving to be better, learning from our mistakes, and acting with humility. When we live in alignment with our values, we no longer need validation from others, and our goodness becomes genuine. This is true freedom, living with integrity, being true to ourselves, and letting our actions reflect who we truly are. In the end, the question, "Are you a good person or a slave to the image of goodness?" is not an easy one to answer. It requires us to face ourselves and reflect on the motivations behind our every action. Are we living truly as good people, or are we just living to meet the expectations of society? What truly matters is not the image we build, but the authenticity of our actions. Goodness cannot be faked, and only when we live authentically, driven by our own values, can we truly be free.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.